Well, it is day 2 of ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa's appearance before the state capture inquiry. He told the Commission yesterday the party could have done more to combat corruption. He also admits state capture involved members and leaders of the ANC. Let's find out what's expected today from eNCA anchor Tumelo Mothotoane and senior reporter Siphamandla Goge. So, what's on the table this morning?
Absolutely. We'll get into what's on the table this morning in just a moment. We need to reflect on what the President had to say yesterday, which was much but not much, because accountability was what most South Africans were expecting, including different opposition parties. Yes, the President did mention that there are errors. There are, of course, errors in systems with regards to how certain individuals were appointed into SOEs, but they're looking into working into that. The opening statement there making mentions of what the ANC aims to do, the resolutions they've taken, but also not speaking just in theory, Jane, also trying to implement them in practice. I'm joined by my senior reporter colleague here, Siphamandla Goge. We'll get into what was discussed with him in just a moment. Let's just reflect on what the President had to say first with regards to Bosasa.
So the transparency, the openness, for me, is the biggest savior. And also the limitation to the amount that should be given, because the limitation of the amount that should be given is going to stop any entity being able to have an overarching control over a political party. But in this case, it did happen. And there's no way of running away from it or even hiding it, because it did happen. That company, Bosasa, had contract with government, and it funded an ANC election room and all that. I would say, having happened, unless there's something criminal about it, which should be pursued following the investigation by the Commission, we should now say, how do we make sure that we move to a new situation where we do not have a capture of that type.
All right, well, there you had it from the President of the ANC and the Republic. My colleague Siphamandla, good morning to you. Quite chilly, but we have to bring some heat into this conversation. The President there talking about Bosasa, essentially saying that, the ANC shouldn't have accepted any funding from Bosasa, particularly after some of those allegations came that they might have, had, or rather have witnessed some corrupt activities there with regards to how they got that funding.
Indeed, there was no way he was going to avoid the issue of Bosasa coming up. In fact, there are two names here, or surnames here, the Guptas and the Watsons. There was no way the President of the ANC was going to avoid questions about Bosasa. The context to that question was the evidence leader putting it to the President of the ANC to say, hang on, when it comes to business donations here, donors giving you money, you accepted money from Bosasa as the ANC, yet it was clear from the onset that Bosasa was raking in millions of rands from government contracts from the state and then funding the ANC, which is a governing party. But that is not the point. The point is Bosasa had been flagged in the media for wrongdoing, for allegations of corruption. Why did you continue to receive money from Bosasa? Well, the President's answer and posture was, it happened, it shouldn't have happened, we are not hiding it, we can't hide it, we should have known better. But let's move on now. We will fix it. As to how, he didn't provide any concrete explanation. Yesterday, he spent the entire day acknowledging that mistakes were made. But there was no accountability. There is no clear plan as to how they intend to fix it. Even his opening remarks were like a mini, or what we can call a crash course on how the ANC works, its resolutions, its systems in place. But who needs to account for the mess that has happened? Well, yesterday, we didn't get the answer.
Absolutely. It sounded more, we heard more from the President talking about the intentions of the ANC to correct. We heard more about, the intentions to do better, the resolutions they've taken, not only in theory, but I suppose even alluding to the step-aside issue, practicing, just rooting out some of the corruption within the party. But I didn't get a clear sense from the President, as we heard in the past, where he did concede that the ANC was captured.
He said in 2019, 29 April, the ANC was captured before the state was captured. It was very clear during that time or at that time. But when he came here, it was a watered-down version of what he has been saying all along. I think, well, Cyril Ramaphosa is a politician. He's the president of the governing party, which is a deeply divided organization. There are factions within the ANC. He alluded to that when he was giving his testimony here. So he was trying to play diplomatically so that he doesn't in a way upset those who are his critics within the ANC, the other faction. But also, remember, the ANC subscribes to this notion of the collective responsibility doctrine, where they say we are together, we do things collectively. So he wouldn't have come here as the president of the ANC to throw his organization under the bus. He had to defend his comrades while at the same time trying to say, yes, it happened. You know, he stopped short of saying, we are sorry.
Yeah. We'll leave it there, but also there's another issue that was touched on in terms of SOEs. And I want to play this bite for you, South Africans first, where the president is making, statements with regards to state-owned enterprises and obviously some of the allegations, ANC members and officials that have been accused of either being appointed there irregularly, deployed there, or perhaps benefiting irregularly from some of the funding from these SOEs.
There was massive system failure. And some of it could have happened advertently, where certain people were put in certain positions to advance certain agendas, as you are investigating now about the capture of some of those entities. And so what you're saying is germane to precisely what your commission is dealing with. And some of it was so hidden, so masked that you just could not see that a certain individual was there to advance a particular agenda. And that is why we rely on your commission to ferret the truth out so that we are able to see it. But as regards going forward, and which is where your commission will make recommendations and will be able to overlay some of the reform processes that we are involved in, we will want to have a completely new chapter. We must open a new page and be able to say, when it comes to state-owned enterprises, we've come from a horrible past that converted some of the really top-performing state-owned enterprises into the shadow of themselves today. So we now need to move forward with greater firmness in as far as populating not only the boards but the management with people who are capable, who are focused.
Well, we heard there from the President, Siphamandla, talking about, cadre deployment, some of the appointments to state-owned enterprises, alluding to the fact that it was due to a massive system failure.
Indeed, and the context to that is very important because he was asked about the ANC's controversial cadre deployment policy, as well as the ANC's deployment committee, which he chaired as the deputy president of the ANC. That is important and significant because at the center of state capture are state-owned entities. People deployed in those SOEs, when you're talking about board members as well as senior executives there, you are talking about CEOs and others. So the ANC would sit with its deployment committee to say, listen, we've got these cadres that we need to deploy. They must apply for these positions. If they are lucky, they will get them. So he was trying to explain how some of the people were deployed there without the knowledge of the deployment committee, which he chaired. But later on, he came back and explained that, well, even with himself as the president of the ANC currently and the president of the country, he has made some of the appointments without without consulting the deployment committee, which is chaired by his deputy currently. So he was saying, well, in the past he had to confront his predecessor to ask him about some of those appointments, to say, why did you not consult us on this? So he outlined all of that in that context, but the mess of state capture is as a result of some of those cadres of the ANC being captured by people with business interests.
But I mean, again, Siphamandla, instead of giving names, timelines and details to this, I got a sense that the president was, again, talking more of the intentions to correct that massive system failure. I almost got a sense that he would almost rebrand the cadre deployment issue to a cadre development if they have to as an organization.
Indeed, going to the extent of saying, listen, this is an international practice, there is nothing wrong with it, you can't blame cadre deployment, yes, mistakes were made in the past. And I think for me yesterday, you know, Cyril Ramaphosa's testimony was all about, listen, we agree it happened, let's move on. Not telling the country how they are going to fix it, but more importantly, who should be blamed and who should account for that, what is being done to ensure that there is accountability, there is transparency. So his testimony yesterday was all about, yes, it happened, we acknowledge, let's move on. So cadre deployment will continue to be a central feature in the ANC, and state capture, because those people who are alleged to have been captured in those SOEs are ANC cadres that have been forwarded by the ANC to say, let's deploy them there. He defended that deployment policy, cadre deployment policy, saying it was essential and necessary for transformation.
Right.
But let me tell you what he did, which will lead us to the bite that you will play shortly. The context of him explaining why the ANC decided not to participate in terms of forwarding names of cadres to be deployed in judiciary and law enforcement agencies, because he was asked by the evidence leader to say, did the ANC deployment committee ever discuss issues of judicial appointments and appointments when it comes to law enforcement agencies? You are talking about the National Director of Public Prosecutions, the head of the Hawks and other institutions, and he was very clear then, vocal in saying no. Remember also, there are people who are complaining about what is called judicial capture in this country.
On that note, colleague, let's listen to what the president had to say.
There has been evidence that there were appointments influenced by or made by the former president to fit another purpose, an ulterior and illegitimate purpose. Were you aware of that? That evidence known to you?
No, I was not, you know, as I said in my statement and in the bulk of my statement or affidavit. And as I said, you know, some of these state capture issues became only evident in time as we moved on. And that is why I even referred to the statement by Minister, let me call him Comrade Fikile Mbalula, for purposes of the type of evidence I'm giving now here. Because when he mentioned in an NEC meeting how he had come to know about his appointment, even at that time, we were not alive to the fact that there was state capture and there was something horribly wrong going on. So some of these appointments would have happened in that course of time, and one, with hindsight, then became aware that there was a common thread, and if you joined the dots, you would find that there was something that was amiss that was really happening. So at the time, and some of them would have happened even before I was even deputy president, the process had been ongoing, and only became evident much later what actually was happening.
Well, some of the sentiments there shared by the ANC president. But, colleague, this is day 2. What's still to come?
What transpires today will be determined by the direction the evidence leader will take in terms of questioning ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa. We expect that they will focus on his testimony from yesterday, but we expect that he will wrap up today. Let me remind our viewers that yesterday the chair of the commission, the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, said those dates that were set up earlier on, which is the 13th and 14th of May, where President Cyril Ramaphosa will have to come back as the former Deputy President and the current President of the Republic, they have been moved forward, or they've been moved back rather. He will come back towards the end of May. New dates will have to be determined. So the 13th and the 14th of May is not going to happen, but he's definitely coming back towards the end of May as the former Deputy President and the Deputy President of the Republic.
All right, colleague, we'll leave it there. And of course, as we do, it's still very much a chilly morning right here in Braamfontein, Jane, but also the police presence quite heavy, making sure that traffic is deviated from the entourage of the president making their way. As you know from today, he is expected to begin at 9 a.m., but we'll be continuing with this live coverage as we build up to the second day of the president's testimony.